Welcome to the main event. This session is brought to you by the gold sponsor for today, which is Labra, helping you tap into the power of cloud marketplaces. So this is the main event. One of the most influential voices in Outbound, the Sultan of Sales, Morgan Ingram, facing off versus the Morpheus of the partnerships moment, the king of connectors, Jared Fuller. Keep it clean, gentlemen. This is going to be a clean fight. I don't want anything dirty here, no tricks. So let's get started. I'm going to open with a question for both of you. Is the outbound salesperson an endangered species? Whoever wants to take it.
I'm going to hop in first because Morgan, I read your LinkedIn post the other day announcing that you've ventured off on your own. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
But whenever Morgan was venturing out to do his own thing, he didn't start as something in sales. It was about influence, and it's a little bit different. So I think, whenever the king of outbound, we got on this conversation, is not to say that he's saying it's dead, but like veering slightly off path, I would say the trajectory is not up and to the right.
Okay, so we're gonna start there. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it. So I started off, as most of y'all know, as an SDR, right? That's what I did, and outbound was the move, right? For sure. I would say that outbound will look different, yet if you understand the skill, you're going to stand out even more. So let's talk about that. The days of, hey, we're going to go put things in a cadence and put it out there and get meetings, you could do that. Obviously, you cannot do that now. Even a lot of data has shown that has actually decreased in the reply rate. However, if you have the good skill set, right, of outbound, you're going to be able to still get solid meetings, whether you're doing video, email, calling, LinkedIn. There's a lot of areas you can go. And so I wouldn't say like, oh, this is going to be downhill. I'm actually saying if you're really good at it and you take this skill seriously, you actually will be way ahead of people because people might not take the time to do that. And, there's other things we can dive into, but I really want to talk about how like the personalization piece of outbound is still there, not outbound spray and pray, hope everything works out.
So what is the ideal? We'll start with you, Morgan, on this. In your mind, what does the ideal set of activities look like for an outbound salesperson? And then Jared, I want to hear what that set of activities, how does that differ for a nearbound approach?
Yeah. So when you think about outbound, most people think you got to go make 100 and 120 calls a day. And that's just not the case. And some people are like, oh, I'm just going to hang out and chill and hope things happen, right? From an inbound or even nearbound. I don't know what Jared's going to say, but maybe nearbound. So that's not what we're looking to do here. So I'm going to just do math because if you do it this way, it actually makes a lot of sense. So let's say I took the time to do 10 personalized videos. I did 10 personalized emails a day. Most people will tell you that's a lot. They're like, oh, that's a lot of time. It's really not, because if you did 20 of those, let's say 20 times 5, you're at 100 times 4 for the month, 400. If you convert at least 10 of those, like you got a good amount of meetings there. So that is the approach that's a basic approach. I could go deeper, but that is what people need to be thinking about is how can I have quality outputs on a day-to-day basis to put myself in a good spot, especially for account executive. This is a no-brainer situation.
So Morgan, I'll respond to that. What do you think is the appropriate ramp time for like a standard SDR that's say, middle of the pack, like a 20K to 50K ACV? So not crazy enterprise, kind of like middle of the pack. What is a ramp time that you'd advise a company to be at quota? Is it 30, 60, 90? How many months?
90, 120 days.
Okay. So here's what I think it looks like in a nearbound world. In a nearbound world, that ramp time is probably closer to 6 to 9 months. Why? Mm-hmm. Because the job isn't to do activities. The job is to be an expert at the thing that the customer is trying to do. So see, the way that we all buy today doesn't match the way that we sell. We spend all of our time doing things that isn't the job of the customer. And yet, whenever we buy something, we buy it from who? Someone we trust. The podcast that we listen to, it's people that can speak to us from experience, right? That understand us. Like as Sam McKenna says, or Joe Rowley says, show me you know me, right? And then prove you care. So I think the personalization, I think Nearbound takes it one step further. And what we're doing is we're not just going after the account, we're building a relationship and a path to a better place with the people that account already does business with, whether that's consultants, agencies, other tech companies.
Mm.
So you're going to have a longer ramp time, but you're actually taking a much more strategic approach. So I'd say it's compound interest. And I think the comp and the structure and that, starts to change. And this is manifesting already. So I have two examples. Pete Caputa, Databox, they have kind of like this ecosystem evangelist role, which are out there building influence in market. And then HubSpot's also hired these types of roles as well, which they're not outbound SDRs, but they're also not inbound SDRs just waiting for the stuff to come to them. I think that's why Nearbound works.
So when I say this phrase, which has been uttered a couple times today during this event, technically not today, because as you can tell from the background, this was recorded Friday of last week. So just letting you all know.
Morgan's going to be out of town, so we had to record this one.
That's right. That's right. This phrase, imagine a world with no salespeople. What's your first reaction, Morgan, and then Jared?
I mean, I don't even like that one.
Yeah, like imagine a world no salespeople. Look, I this is my take on this. Will over time will there be less and less? I could see that, sure. Well, especially as technology arises and emerges, for sure. I'm like, whoa, that sounds crazy. That sounds absurd to me. Don't think that would. I don't think that's ever realistically gonna ever happen. That's like my first take with it.
Isaac, you're married, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so sales is never going away. It's that simple. To sell, I mean, to sell is human.
Yeah.
I think here's the difference. It's a continuum, right? So you have the seller that is the stereotype, right? The snake oil salesman, whatever the heck you want to call it, where it's the antithesis of trust. And then you have someone that's like, I don't know, Anthony Robbins, right? Like you're just amped as heck to buy from him if you're going to his stuff, right? Anthony Robbins is a sales dude, right? He's selling a vision. That's it, right? And there's plenty of people like that have high conviction in what they do, and they are experts and they're phenomenal at sales. And I'd say that's very much a partnerships-like approach because they have relationships with the people around the customer, right? They have influence in market. So no, I don't think sales is going away, but I think sales as it's defined now, not the same.
So I started with the extreme to get it all warmed up. Now let's back from that a little bit. Imagine a world where salespeople were not in the building, so to speak. So the company you work for, your sales team is not employed by you. Your sales team exists elsewhere. They are a network of various partners. So you have salespeople, but you don't have a sales team. What do you think of that kind of arrangement? Morgan, in particular, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah. So I actually want to go back to Jared's point because I want to actually co-sign this. I think it's absolutely important for everyone to know when you first think of sales, which is why I never wanted to get in the first place, is like slimy, aggressive, like trickster, right? And so that has been the norm. And as it changes and as it has a little bit, right, to be doing it the right way. When I was with John Barrows, like we talk this all the time, is like how to do sales the right way. So my response to Isaac here is like, yeah, on the partner side, that's good. I also believe as well, you want to have those people inside internally that can still sell and do those things accordingly so that you can have those subject matter experts that you can have and continuously grow and then make sure that you can sell at that volume because you're going to have two people or two teams effectively going at it. But having that internal team is going to be critical because you might be able to tap into accounts that you weren't able to go to because of the outbound approach as well.
I mean, so 76% of the world trade is indirect, according to the WTO, right? Like channel exists everywhere, right? Indirect monetization, and you buy stuff from the grocery store, Amazon, like you just name it, indirects everywhere. So I don't think that there's a world where there isn't sellers internally. I just think there's sellers by a different name, right? Like that's what it's going to be. It's the role of what it means to be an influencer, and that's your primary role, right? Like what is sales? You're influencing someone, right? The difference between sales today and sales tomorrow is sales today is you have no pre-existing reason to have any semblance of influence over that person. Sales tomorrow is you're coming with influence, right? You're going to be closer to that customer and or partner, and that's still a sales activity. Partner recruitment, they don't just come to you and like magically start, deals start dropping out of the sky. It's still sales. It's just sales in another form.
Yep.
So would you think of it perhaps as a question of leverage rather than selling one individual customer? You're selling someone who themselves could go and sell or help you sell.
And that's
to many
franchises too,
customers.
right? Like that's another, old thing. Like you should be thinking that way. I think the best salespeople that I know, they treat themselves like a franchise owner, right? Like they have a ton of people that they can call on that are influencers in high places. They're not scared to get into contact with, the husband's board member, right? Like they find ways to get influence on the account that is not just the direct path to the 5 contacts that are assigned to them in CRM. They find ways to get influence around that account. And I think you should be thinking like a franchise owner if you have a quota.
I've got a little pushback for you, Jared. Morgan, maybe you'll appreciate this and agree with me on this one here. So there's this great romantic idea that you have this partner ecosystem. You have all these service providers who might be out there helping you sell. You've got tech partners. You've got this, co-selling motions with other companies. But realistically, none of those people are strongly incentivized to really sell. They're kind of like passively, yeah, if the mood is right and everything lines up, sure, I'll do this if it benefits me. How do you realistically manage that if there's nobody whose entire income is dependent on closing that deal? We got him, Morgan. We got him.
I mean, there's 100 answers to this. So I'll give you an example using your words. So ROI DNA, it was probably the fastest growing ABM agency, maybe not last year before last, Matt Query. So he has a team of, I'm not sure what he calls them. It's not account managers, but basically his entire organization that's responsible for driving revenue for ROI DNA is compensated based on customer outcomes. So I think that's the first thing, is that it doesn't have to be necessarily on the deal closed. I've seen a couple other examples of where compensations move from like closed won to customer outcome, because that more correctly aligns with the customer. And if you're an agency or service provider, right? Like the deal in the door isn't the thing, it's the output. And then I would also say that I made this prediction at the beginning of the year that I think, and I believe, and it should happen, that, indirect partners, whether they're agencies, whoever, or even freelancers, influencers, right? Like solopreneurs. The number one partner for HubSpot was Marcus Sheridan. He had a pool cleaning company and he became HubSpot's number one partner. Started selling HubSpot software to other pool cleaners. Drift, our number one partner, hot air balloon. Like Eliav, he has a hot air balloon company and he sold it to every single hot air balloon thing in the world. Here's my point. Eliav should have gotten equity. Marcus Sheridan should have gotten equity. So I think we'll start to see equity get democratized outside of the walls of the company. And I think that's a future where you could have that incentive, where it's long-term and based on customer outcomes. So I'm highly interested in that becoming something table stakes in the future.
Morgan, let's flip the incentives question. Do you think it's a problem that salespeople are incentivized to make sure they're the ones going out and closing this deal, because that can cause them to have an incentive to submarine partner deals and to let partners come in, get credit for that, pull them off of, is there a problem there? And as we look to a future where direct sales is harder and harder, I would argue outbound is getting harder. Certainly it's getting.
Oh, it's not getting easier? That was getting easier. What do you mean?
Oh, it's getting easier?
Yeah, it's getting easier. I don't know what you're talking about.
What do you think about it? Like, is there an incentive problem with salespeople that is causing them to, doesn't really give them a reason to care about partner sales because it doesn't improve their compensation structure?
Well, yeah, look, it comes down to two things. One is incentives drives behavior. And number two is expectations are everything. And a lot of times, if you look at majority of organizations, and Jared would know this more than me, but this is just what I've seen, the partner team is like siloed. They're like on a whole nother island. It's like, oh yeah, we got a partner team, whatever, right? So the sales team doesn't even know it's even there sometimes. Like I've been in organizations before, I trained them like, oh, we have a partner team? Like, y'all didn't know that? So what it comes down to is that the sales team is always going to be, for the most part, until we see obviously these changes that we've been talking about, will be incentivized more. And obviously, if I'm a rep and I know I'm going to get X percentage of the deal, if I co-sell the deal, I'm going to get less. I'm going to obviously go eat what I can kill, essentially, right? And that's where I want to go into this a little bit more. that's where I feel like what happens that goes wrong is because most organizations think about outbound as cold. When I think about outbound, it's whatever we have to do possible to get the meeting. So that could be referrals, right? That could be all those different things across the board, networking with the people, connecting, and even to the space I'm going into now, which is like B2B influencer marketing. That as an element is actually outbound because you are posting and putting yourself out there. People will obviously come in inbound, but you are using that influence to bring people in. But that only works if you're posting and things of that nature. So and I'm bringing those points up because the compensation piece overall, if I'm getting paid more as a sales rep, why in the world would I want to go co-sell if I'm getting less? The expectations on the partnership side, they have to come together and be like, okay, like how do we make this work together, right, to win? But Jared, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, what I would say is you're 100% right on compensation. If you're in a partnerships role right now and you have a comp plan where the seller is taking home less if they bring in a partner, guess what? You don't have a job in a year. Like, you better have the conviction to go to battle with your CFO and your CEO and say, we double comp. Why? Because these are going to be healthier. I mean, look, at Drift, enterprise win rate, 19%. Over 200 deals where we had partner attach, 59%, right? Business case, slammed, shut, right? Like, we can change the comp plan and we can double comp. These customers stayed longer. They paid more. We can make the business case, but don't you dare walk into a comp plan as a partner leader and take food off your sellers' plates. Like, this is partnerships. Aren't your sellers supposed to be your partners? So absolutely the comp plan has to be aligned, and it's called double comp. Yes, it's more expensive, but at the same time, is it really more expensive 19% versus 60% win rate? It's actually a heck of a lot more effective if you do the math the other way around.
Yep. Morgan, I think I heard you say something to the effect of influence is the new outbound there. That's pretty interesting to see the influencer not so much as the marketing person, but actually that's sales.
Yeah, no, I believe it's the future sales, period. Like, that's where I'm at with it. And if you think about it, you look at majority of organizations that, look at the gongs, they could probably attest to a lot of this with Sarah Brazier, like that, she did her thing. You even look at organizations like even Sales Off, their EMEA team, they had like Charlotte Johnson, they've had Mattia, they've had a couple, Tom Boston, they've had people that were sales reps going into that. Now that's a RevTech example. There are probably other examples in spaces I don't know about, but when you think about that, they were still in their roles posting that created influence, which essentially was outbound because they had to click the post button. And then on top of that, they also were still doing emails and still doing outbound, but it was easier, right? Because when they made that email, they made that call quicker across the board. Like,
they were authority.
Yeah, exactly.
They were authority.
When I was at JB Sales, same thing.
Imagine Sarah working with some sales trainers or consultants, right? And helping them with Gong too, like even more leverage. So I agree with your point. And I would say those same people should also be the ones working with the consultants, the advisors, the agencies, the whoever, because you're going to get even more leverage out of that brand from, someone who's kicked butt like Sarah.
Yeah.
So giving you guys a heads up, we have just under 10 minutes remaining. I've got a question here from our gold sponsor for the day, Labra. This is a great question, just kind of about how things are shifting. Canalys reports that last year, 4.1 billion of sales flowed through cloud hyperscale marketplaces like AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft, which was up 71% from the year before. So clearly something is happening here. But customers don't seem to be using these as self-serve marketplaces. They still want to negotiate contracts. Mm-hmm. They still want to customize. So here's the question. Who is best positioned to help them do this? Sales teams or channel partners?
I could chime in as you think about that, Jared, a little bit, because I hate answering it this way, and I'll clarify because I hate always answering questions. But it depends. And here's why I'm going to say this: depends on who your buyer is, right? So, for example, let's use a RevTech example. If you have a marketplace, hey, here's whatever, and maybe you have we just talked about it. You have like a service arm, or maybe you have like hey, this person will talk to you if you have X amount of users. Okay, if you have like someone who is a content creator and they're selling to sales leaders or marketing leaders, and you have that person internally, you could use that person as the community advocate, right? And they could tap into those different applications to the people that are assigned to the marketplace. And that's how you get people to sign up. That's what I would do. Now, again, you have to think about it like, would channel be better in some areas? I could see that. But again, it all depends on the buyer here, on who would be best to suit that, because I would rather have my sales team in there if they're going after rev tech. But other industries, I would have a different conversation there.
I'm going to use it depends here too, because there's
Yeah.
multiple reasons why you use a hyperscaler like cloud marketplace, right? One is, let's say you sell into InfoSec, right? Or data or something like that, and you're working with AWS. Like, what's a massive benefit of being somewhere like that or Microsoft? It's that the CIO that you're trying to sell to already has a EULA and an enterprise,
They're in there,
an
yeah.
ELA with that company, and you can actually wrap it inside of that same deal. And there's a bunch of frankly, business development type paperwork stuff. That's why, Labra's awesome. Like, it can help take care of some of that stuff. So I think what they can do and what other people can do like that is they can take that off of like a partnerships function. I'll be honest. I've done these deals. It's not really like partnerships. It's more like I would call it a channel. Like, it's a dedicated thing. It's not like you're doing business development and establishing new relationships. Because here's the reality. Those marketplaces, they're not really going to source you net new deals until you go invest in work. So I'd say close the deals where you need to with sales, and then the partner team should be trying to build influence and relationships with those people that are influential inside of those hyperscalers. So I think you'd actually bifurcate how I would tackle it and have in the past.
So how much of to the extent that there is a challenge for sales teams to be working the partnerships approach, and vice versa, partner teams to be working with sales teams, how much of that is about the technology that's being used, is about asking sales teams to switch between all kinds of different partner portals and go hop into all this different stuff where they just want to be doing their work? What do you think is, like, are we at a point, we've heard this, that we're really early sort of in the decade of partner ecosystems? Do you feel like the tools are going to move us a long way as the tools develop and get better, the ops side, the tech stack, for integrating sales and partnerships?
I'll hop in on this one first. So right now, today, we have the tooling. It exists. What we lack is what this day was for, and why I'm so honored that everyone is here, is that we need a joint conversation that's about co-selling, right? Because at the end of the day, anyone that's led and hired salespeople and managed a sales organization and had a multi-million-dollar or $100 million number over their head for the end of the year, they had to overcome one thing, and that is called management. Management is the hardest thing to do in all of sales. So not being the leader and not being the rep, it's that next person up. Your best reps, more often than not, they're the worst managers. And what happens is you have to teach that manager on how to do the partner motion, right? Like all of this stuff. So for example, you could go use Reveal, right? And Reveal will give you data on which accounts have partner overlap. If I'm a manager and I'm helping my team assign accounts, why the heck would I make them go work accounts where we have zero influence? I'm going to go work the accounts where we have the influence. But guess what happens? The managers don't do that. They think, oh, they're going to mess up my deal. I'm going to lose control. Like, they're not bought in. So I would say the tooling's there. It's more of a cultural shift. The tooling is getting better all the time. I think it's conversations like this and having thousands of people from sales and partnerships coming together. And like, got the king Outbound here. I'm up here trying to shake things up and bring these things together. I mean, fast forward this conversation in a year, Isaac, I think we're going to be a lot closer.
Yeah, I'm gonna add to that, and it's some optimization. So one thing that I've seen, like when I go and train sales teams, they're like, "Oh, we have like 30 tools," and I'm like, "You don't need 30 tools. You don't need 30 tools to do outbound. You really don't. You really, like, at maximum, like you really only need 3, like sales engagement, data, and then some type of CRM, right? That's like all you really need. And what happens? People keep adding and adding and adding. And then that leads to people having bad outbound because they're not taking the time to be proficient in it, which will then kind of go back to answering the question here. I'm not familiar with all of the tools out there, so glad that Jared kind of went and said, like, hey, like, they're there. It comes down to understanding how do we optimize and work these tools together. What happens in most organizations is they buy tools in silos. So, all right, we're going to go buy this, we're going to buy that, but no one's asking, okay, we're going to get this tool and how would it work with this team and this team and this team so that we can optimize it accordingly. And then it comes down to like what was already said, which is coaching. Most managers, especially on the outbound side, only know the tools on that side. there has to be a level of education to be like, okay, we have this tool. This is how it works with this tool. This is how we're going to work it together. Like I'm just, for example, like a Crossbeam's a tool. So like, there's just things that you can look out there and say, okay, we have the sales engagement tool. We have this tool. We have this tool, right? And they all work together. But the problem is there's not coaching around it and there's not optimization conversations on how to do it.
Yeah, to follow on that, like a Crossbeam or a Reveal or any kind of data escrow for partner data, it shouldn't be anything that the rep even has to touch, right? Like that's the first thing. If you make it something else that the rep has to touch, lost battle, terrible idea, right? Not a good start.
No.
Then from there, it's really is all about the coaching and like how to live in that world, and then some semblance of. This is where I actually think things need to get to for organizations that I've seen crush it and turn the corner, is you actually need to have some sort of floor, meaning, you know, you have to have X or Y partner attach rate on your deals in order to hit President's Club, for example. And you might go, whoa, that sounds crazy, Jared. Well, guess what? Every single successful company that's broke out and become an ecosystem leader, they all have partner attach rate quotas. So like, it's just, hey, you have to do it.
There's this idea sometimes that, hey, if we keep adding tools, it'll keep getting more efficient. But I think you're both kind of saying the fewer tools you can require people to use, the better. All right, I got a final wrap up for you each. 30 seconds to a minute max. Give me your pitch, Morgan, for the future of outbound sales, and then Jared, you can bring it home with the future for Nearbound.
Yeah. So look, y'all, the future in outbound sales might be an answer y'all you may not be expecting from me, but the thing is, like, it comes down to two core things. Number one is I believe that as the sales development rep stands as of today, we will start to get even more specialized, where we'll have SDRs typically probably focus on one industry or even one subset of a persona to maximize relevancy and personalization. I could see that happening. On the other side is you're going to see inevitably, whether y'all like it or not, the rise of B2B influencer marketing or even content creation communities, et cetera. And that will be used as an outbound engine to then create conversations that obviously will come in inbound, but you have to be doing that proactively so people know who you are. So that's where I see the future of outbound going.
I'm here for it. Jared, Nearbound.
I'm 100% here for it. That's this event. That's why Morgan's here. That's why we're doing this right now. If you don't believe us, like, you're here watching this. So if you're a sales leader or a partner leader, like Morgan and I are saying the same thing right now. I completely agree with that. I think the titles and the functions and the day in the life will morph. I've called out a few things like evangelists. I think you'll have a combination of evangelists and experts, right? And the seller role starts to look more like a consultant role. And I think your SDR role starts to look more like an evangelist role. I think both of those roles are higher paid and higher specialized. But to Morgan's point, I do believe it is influencers, right? And they just take different shapes. So Nearbound is about what? Not just marketing to the customer that's in your base. It's about building an audience of trust and having a point of view, and helping them in the job that they're trying to do. In other words, really caring about, like, if whatever you sell, if you're an evangelist, you actually have to care about the thing, right? It's not just something you're selling. You have to be an expert. And that can be a big shift for some sellers today. And I think that's why outbound will morph to nearbound. And it's, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The future's bright though.
Gentlemen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much to Labra for sponsoring this session. I feel like we had a photo finish like the end of Rocky, where both punches are landing at the same time. Freeze frame. Everybody wins. Thank you so much.